College football season is a little bit more than a week away here on the WRAL Triangle in Two podcast. Mark Bergin, Pat Welter. And Pat, you're coming off fantasy draft with some of your buddies, but we've got more drafting to do. Got a lot of top players here in the Triangle to discuss here on today's episode.
This draft will be a little bit different than the one I just did with my 12 senior year college roommates. Hopefully we'll a little clearer of mind in this one, but just as much fun. And I'm ready, man. I'm coming off an auction draft. I'm locked in with player values, player analysis, and it's fun to apply it to some of these local guys here in the Triangle. I know we're not playing fantasy football, but this is the next best thing.
So we'll go back and forth. We're talking about players from UNC, Duke, North Carolina State, NC State. So, Pat, the first pick is yours in terms of all people we get. So a lot of really talented players here in the Triangle to go through, and floor is yours.
Well, I'll try not to do what I saw somebody do on social media, which was instead of drafting Bijan Robinson, number one in their fantasy football NFL draft, they drafted running back Brian Robinson, number one overall in their fantasy draft. And no making any mistake on this guy's name. I'm going to go with quarterback Darian Mensah from Duke.
Good pick.
This guy seems to be the consensus number one overall quarterback in our market, was one of, if not the number one quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and I'm loving everything I am hearing about him so far. Mobile quarterback, also a great pocket passer, and then there's just like the leadership and the general overallness where he's just a smooth operator. This is a smooth guy as a person, smooth guy as a football player, and he's stepping into a school that's had some of the best quarterbacks in the Triangle the last couple of years. We're going back to Riley Leonard, to Malik Murphy last year. Darian Mensah steps in. I know Manny Diaz and Duke is supposed to be a defense-first program, but I think their offense this year is going to be really good.
That's something I have in my notes here is, and this is a question mark, an upgrade over Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy going to Oregon State now in the transfer portal, but Duke could potentially upgrade here. I mean, that's the thought process coming off a 9-win season. I look at the reported money, too. The next 2 years, he's going to make a reported $8 million. So follow the money. That's one of the things that I look at as well. But Duke going up against Tulane here this year as well, so he'll get to play his former team as well. So there's excitement there. But everything you hear about him, I mean, there's a reason why Mensah was considered the number 3 overall transfer in ESPN's final ratings list of all of the transfers available. So that's a very good pick for your first overall pick of all the exciting players that they're here to watch here in the Triangle.
I'm sweating a little bit. The anticipation is building. My number one pick is off the board. Who you got at number 2 overall?
CJ Bailey, NC State. And I thought he played really well as a freshman, had to go into the games because of career-ending injuries to Grayson McCall, and played in 11 games, had 9 starts. As a freshman, 65% of his passes completed. And I think about the fact that he was only the 3rd true freshman in NC State history to start a game. And when you consider the likes that Phillip Rivers is one of the other quarterbacks to do that, I think this is a huge year for him and Dave Dorn of if NC State's going to reach the next level, they've got to be able to play sound defense, but I think that CJ Bailey, his ability to be a playmaker for the Wolfpack offense is going to be absolutely vital in the 2025 season.
Yeah, I mean, like as soon as he stepped in last year for injured Grayson McCall, you could see like the physical tools, like the height, 6'6". Now he was skinny as a string bean, but he's gained like 30 pounds already since he's been on campus.
That's listed on the NC State website that he's added at least 20
pounds. They put it
in
the bio.
So yes. I'd like to see him cut down on some turnovers, so 10 interceptions a year ago, but that's going to come with some of the growing pains that you have as a young quarterback, and he has that playing experience as a freshman, and hopefully he doesn't have that sophomore slump, that he can continue to ascend and play at a high level. So that was my pick. That's why I had it at number 2. Let's keep this rolling. You've got the next pick, Pat.
Well, this flows nicely into the number 3 overall pick. I'm going to take his top target, Justin Joly.
Okay.
Tight end, NC State. And in NFL fantasy drafts, you're not taking a lot of tight ends historically necessarily in the first round, but this is a guy that in the college landscape is kind of like a Rob Gronkowski, a Brock Bowers this year. He's a true receiving threat and an all-around excellent tight end. He's a first-team preseason All-ACC selection. He was second on the team in receptions last year. His yardage led the team as a tight end. So, incredible find for a guy like Dave Doran, who isn't maybe looked at as like somebody whose strength is necessarily playing the portal. He's kind of a traditionalist, but he found a real diamond in the rough here from UConn. And honestly, when I look at Joly, like, I think he's just a diamond in the rough in general. Like, he got lost in the shuffle kind of during the pandemic recruiting. He's from New Rochelle, New York. It's tougher to recruit in that time. New York doesn't get as much, there's not as much athletes per capita football-wise in the greater New York area, state area. So I think he just kind of slipped through the cracks. NC State found him, and now he's like a legitimate NFL prospect. And I can't wait to see what he does this year.
Big dude, 6'3", 250 plus. 15.4 yards per catch. So I look at the yak. That's the yards after catch with Joly of, okay, how are you going to get CJ Bailey going? This has to be one of his top targets again, over the middle, keeping defenses honest and being a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses.
And he says he loves the spotlight. I was at ACC kickoff. And the best part about going to ACC kickoff is you never know who you're going to run into. Sometimes it's in weird places that you don't expect, one of which is the elevator. I ran into Andrew Luck in the elevator, and he's like, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Andrew." I'm like, "I'm aware." And one of the other people I ran into was Justin Joly. He's wearing this flashy red suit. And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to try to interview you later." He's like, "Man, I love the camera." So this is a guy that's getting a lot of hype, and he's ready for the spotlight.
Used to the camera, perhaps used to the end zone. For all of the listeners and the viewers, Pat Welter hasn't washed his hands since shaking Andrew Luck's hand as well. That's incredible.
How could I?
That's
Andrew
incredible.
Luck, now a GM for Stanford. So there you go.
Yeah. I'll go to my next pick. And so interesting that you still left the one quarterback on the board. I'm going to go with Gio Lopez here. And he is one of 70 new players on the UNC roster. I think it's telling that Bill Belichick chose to bring him to the ACC kickoff event in Charlotte, and I think he's going to get first crack at starting quarterback. Now, again, I say follow the money. 2 years for Lopez, a reported $4 million. A lefty as well. I think he'll have his opportunity early on. But that first impression that we get of the Bill Belichick era here in Chapel Hill, it's going to be on his shoulders at least early on. He's going to get the first crack at things when I'd assume he's going to be the starter that hasn't been officially named. But again, I look at why else would you bring him to the ACC kickoff? I'd imagine he'll be the Tar Heel starter during that Labor Day opening night against TCU.
Right, we're recording this on a Tuesday. Timestamp it. He very well could be named the starter Wednesday or when you are literally listening to this. So forgive us for not knowing that at the exact time. But I love this guy. He's similar in the regard to Mensah that I think he's a really smooth player. I think he's a player that his in-game results kind of elevate over maybe what his physical measurables are. He's only 6 feet tall, not that big of a guy. But I know that Bill Belichick likes the fact that he played against LSU last year. So even being in a smaller conference, he's played against some real competition. And Bill Belichick has a lot riding on this guy. So you'd like to think that if you're going to make that kind of shot, you're not going to miss.
Yeah, coming over from South Alabama. And I looked this up because we were like, which conference is that?
Right.
All Sun Belt honorable mentions. So Sun Belt, and also, again, another lefty as well, but he's my pick. Pat, you're up again.
All right, so we are now at 5 overall?
Yeah.
For those out there counting. Number 5th overall pick. Something else you don't literally ever do in NFL fantasy drafts. But in this all-ACC team kind of draft we're doing right now, let's go to the defensive side of the ball for the first time. And I'm going back to Duke, because Duke has a first-team preseason all-ACC selection in cornerback Chandler Rivers. And everything you hear about this guy from Manny Diaz, from other players on Duke, is that he is just an absolute baller. Complete all-around cornerback. And it's not like he's new. He's been playing there for the last several years. He's good in the run game. He's good in the pass game. And Manny Diaz says, nowadays, everyone wants to talk about adding players in the portal. But for him now, the secret to winning in this era is player retention. And Rivers is one of those guys that he's said it, Manny Diaz has said it. He had opportunities to leave. He chose to stay with the Blue Devils. And I love this quote that he gave during ACC kickoff. What we have among each other at Duke, why would you leave that for a couple more dollars? So this is a guy that's all in on the Blue Devils, and putting in my preseason All-American ballot for the AP as a first-time AP voter, I was legitimately looking at putting him All-American. And the stats out there back it up. I think he's probably a legitimate like second-team All-American, but this is a true national talent.
You took my next pick on the board, and of all the players that are available, Pat, I think that Chandler Rivers, of any player playing in the Triangle this fall, is the best NFL prospect for the 2026 NFL Draft. I mean that with all respect to all the other players. I think Justin Joly belongs in that conversation with NC State, but I think that highly of what Chandler Rivers brings to the table, doing everything that you need to do to be a top cornerback, not just in the ACC, but all of college football.
Yeah, and a great story. Former 3-star recruit, and there we go. We're talking about him as a preseason All-American type player.
I don't want to jinx it, but I'd imagine he has an NFL future there. So that's a great pick because, all right, I've got to look at my board
he's
now.
He's scrambling now at number 6.
Yeah, I am going to go back to NC State, believe it or not. I'm going with Hollywood Smothers.
Yeah, that was my next guy. I really wanted him.
I really like the way he finished last season. I know in the loss, Wolfpack coming off a loss in the Military Bowl against ECU, but 139 yards in that game. Had 6.4 yards a carry, 6 touchdowns. I thought, like a quarterback, a lot of times you've got to develop a hot hand. Well, the same can be said about running backs as well. And I really thought on the back half of last season, he got into rhythm and he got comfortable. Now that he'll be considered, a sophomore now, because remember, his freshman year he spent at Oklahoma, redshirts that, and he's considered a freshman last year. I think he'll be even more comfortable in this offense. NC State's got a new offensive coordinator. Okay, what better way to get CJ Bailey comfortable? We know he's got a good tight end. Well, hey, I can just snap the ball and hand it off to Hollywood Smothers in the backfield. I really have high expectations for him this season for NC State.
I mean, the name alone is worth the draft pick. Hollywood Smothers. And he lives up to it, man, because looking at his stats, they didn't blow me away coming back to it, looking at them today. I'm like, only 571 yards, 6 TDs rushing. Also a receiving threat as well, at a couple there. But it was just the plays he made were so impactful. Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, too, a lot of them were in the back half of the season. Because if you remember, NC State brought in Jordan Waters from Duke last season to kind of be the featured back. And he was a solid all-around back, but just didn't have the explosiveness, the big play ability that Smothers had. And whenever he made a play, it was massively impactful, massively memorable. I'm looking for a big year from this guy.
Hollywood
Smothers. All right, so I'm up at number 7.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to go to another NC State defensive player, a guy I just talked to this morning, linebacker Caden Fordham, a guy that was just named a captain, just given the number 1 overall jersey. And I was thinking that maybe this wasn't going to happen this year, that maybe there wasn't a number 1 overall jersey wearing player.
Because it was Van last year. If you could just explain to the viewers, Pat, what that means to wear the number 1 jersey on this defense. What does that mean for NC State as a program?
Yeah, there's a long legacy of it. Last few years, Isaiah Moore, to name a couple of more recent guys. And yeah, it goes to their kind of unquestioned leader. A lot of schools give it to their wide receiver, but that speaks to the culture at NC State where it's typically a defensive player. And Fordham is a guy that reminds me a lot of Peyton Wilson. I remember when Peyton Wilson was coming back for one of his last years, he was coming off a lot of injuries. You see him on all these lists, and you're like, oh, man, I know this guy's talented. I just haven't seen him be able to really put it together. And then he absolutely is a complete man among boys. Now, I don't know that Fordham is at that level physically as a talent, but he's that level of a leader, mentality. He's coming off a knee injury that cut his season short halfway through last year. And Dave Doran can't say enough about him. His teammates can't say enough about him. And if he's wearing that number 1 jersey, he's worth it overall for, what am I at, the 6th overall pick now, or the 7th overall pick in this draft for me.
I got you. I like the case. Okay, I could go to another NC State linebacker here, but I'm going to stay at running back.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Jaquez Moore for Duke.
Nice.
Coming off injury. So this was a key contributor to Duke's running game in 2022 and 2023. He battled injuries, limited only 5 games a season ago. So you're looking at the production from a year ago, and it's like, well, why is this your pick? This was a key contributor when Mike Elko is the head coach, and this is also a Duke team that's coming off a season. The Blue Devils averaged as a team 3.2 yards per carry. If they're going to win 9 games or more than that this season, that has to improve. And I think that starts with Jaquez Moore out of the backfield for Duke.
Yeah, and I think replacing Star Thomas, who I think left in the portal again, came in from the portal, left again. But you saw what Thomas was able to do. We've seen what Moore has been able to do in the passing game. And if Mensah is all that he's hyped up to be, I think that's going to open some doors for him. And yeah, Duke's put out some like sneaky good running backs. Like just kind of putting together this list, like you're kind of like, there's a lot of Duke players on here, which speaks to the job that Elko did, the job that Manny Diaz has done. Because I remember seeing that team, at the end of the previous era under Cutcliffe, where it was just you're looking at that roster at Duke, and you're like, man, a lot of these guys just looking at their body types and their speed, they just don't look like they belong in the ACC. And now we're talking about some of the best players not only in the Triangle but in the whole country. All
right, I think we each have one pick left, Pat. So. Okay. And there's so many guys. I'll list out a bunch of the players I still have on my list because there are several of them. Oh man, this is tough because regardless of who you pick, I feel like I'm going to be leaving someone off my list.
Okay. Well, just for the sake of fair and balanced in the Triangle, and I think the fact that we have not spoken that much about UNC makes me question how good UNC really can be under Bill Belichick in year one, not because of the coaching, because of the talent level. But a player that I'm going to project on, someone that we haven't necessarily seen it from, but I think we will see more from, is Jordan Shipp. So a great late-round pick in fantasy because of the upside, and I see it with the talent with this guy. Like as soon as he stepped onto campus, I saw him in some spring practices 2 years ago, out there like that number one jersey always makes you look a little bit better, but you could just see it visually. And I think UNC's been waiting for a receiver to step up since Josh Downs left, and it hasn't really happened. And it's hurt them. But this is a school that's historically had a lot of good receivers, De'Ami Brown and Josh Downs in the NFL most recently. And Shipp is a big-time recruit. He was a 4-star player from the Charlotte area in North Carolina, one of the top players in the state. And what I've also seen, he's one of the few that stayed. Like this is a guy that like the new coaching regime came in, and a lot of players would run away from that. Because I've heard firsthand from sources how tough it was specifically on the players who stayed. And I think a little militaristically, Belichick wanted it to be that way. And Shipp was a guy that embraced it. He's not only basically become a starter for them, he's also a leader for them. They're putting him out there in front of the microphone to speak to the media. So he's all in on UNC, and I'm going to trust the talent. I'm going to take him with my last pick.
Yeah, UNC is tough to project because you have 70 new players. Now, among those 70, 40 are from the transfer portal, 30 are true freshmen. So it's hard to say who's even going to be a contributor. And something we've covered, if you go to WRALSportsFan.com, is who's going to help carry the load with Omarion Hampton now in the NFL. So that's another thing I'm looking at, not just in the passing game, but which of the running backs are going to step up for UNC as well. And until we get some game action, there, I could read off a list of a roster, Pat, but it's kind of hard to project with the Tar Heels.
Well, and I just one more point before you make your last pick is like I'd love to say I've seen all these things visually in practice, but when I've been to Carolina practice, it's stretching in about 10 minutes and Belichick walking around, and that's it. So it is a great secret. Belichick likes it that way. Maybe working against my pick here is Belichick's history with wide receivers. But you know what? He didn't have to go out and pick this one. He was already there. Yeah. So I'm in on Jordan Shipp.
All right, my last pick. Oh, this is still so tough. I suppose I'll stick with NC State. Go with the linebacker position. Cian Slone, Utah State graduate transfer. He was an all-conference player in the Mountain West. 49 tackles a year ago, 9.5 for a loss, and he had 7.5 sacks. So if that translates over to NC State, he'll be my pick. You mentioned Caden Fordham, veteran linebacker coming back, Sean Brown as well, given the Wolfpack stability. I mean, there's still so many players on my list. Like I could list off Max Johnson at UNC because I think at some point this season he'll play for the Tar Heels. I don't know when. With Gio Lopez
start to begin the year and then go to Gio Lopez later.
There's that. Thaddeus Dixon, the defensive back for UNC. I'm just reading off some other players on my list, Pat, because this was a tough last pick. Trey Freeman out of Duke, a 2-time All-ACC selection. He's going to be playing his 5th and final season in Durham, 41 career games, 21 starts. Terry Moore, the safety coming back from an injury in Duke's bowl game as well. There are a ton. There are other transfer players. I got to mention my guy, though. Memorable factor. I know I ended the last pod on it, but I hope we get to see him at some point for Duke as well. If
only just to say his name and make a few puns. A few honorable mentions for me. Wesley Williams, another one of those great Duke players. He's a defensive end, pass rusher, and I thought this was a really interesting stat. He joins Clemson's TJ Parker as the ACC's only returning players with 6.5 tackles for loss in each of the last 2 seasons and 7.5 sacks in 2024. If you don't know who TJ Parker is, he is potentially the number 1 non-quarterback in next year's NFL draft as a prospect. That's what kind of the company we're talking about was Wesley Williams, speaking again to the depth and talent on that Duke defense. And last one to mention for me, Noah Rogers. He spoke to the media. I just came off of that today, and this is a local kid, played at Rolesville, leaves to go to Ohio State, number 1 player in North Carolina. And, I mean, maybe other than LSU, Ohio State is wide receiver U with the players they've put out the last few years, Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Emeka Ibuka. The list goes on and on.
Alabama and LSU on a word, but I get your point, Pat.
Yeah,
I'm just
one of the 3.
I'm just
so he comes back home. Said it made him stronger over there in Ohio State. He didn't do a ton last year, so we're going to see if that talent can finally rise up because NC State's certainly going to need it.
There is a lot of excitement with the college football season almost here. Let us know what you think, too, in the comment section. If there's a player we missed or someone you felt should have been higher or lower on our lists. We do our best to put this together. I mean, I got several pages of notes here, ladies and gentlemen. But
we're doing the work so you don't have to, and hopefully you can be entertained at the same time, too.
He's the one and only Pat Welter. I'm Mark Bergin. This has been another edition of WRAL Triangle and 2. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube and on Apple and Spotify. If you haven't already, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Pat, thank you so much for your time today.
Go football.